Hello everyone. Today I'm going to explain the perfusion pressure breakthrough, which is a rare complication in arteriovenous malformation surgeries. I am Dr. Dheeraj Masapu. I am consultant and in charge neuroanesthesia and neurointensive care in Sakrawal Hospital, Bangalore. In this particular presentation, I am going to explain the mechanisms behind the perfusion pressure breakthrough and what is the relevance of those mechanisms and controversies related to the mechanisms and what are the practical evidence-based strategies to deal with the situation. So before going to the presentation, this is how a typical scenario of perfusion pressure breakthrough looks like. A 20-year-old gentleman will present to the hospital with grade 3 or which is called as a high grade arteriovenous malformation, and the surgery will go uneventfully, following which usually after 24 to 48 hours or sometimes after 72 hours the patient will start complaining of severe headache and maybe a seizure, sometimes drowsiness also. And if we do a CT scan, it might show a large area of edema in the CT scan near the surgical site, or sometimes there can be an intracranial hematoma. So this kind of situation might arise. So before going to the management aspect, let us first understand what an arteriovenous malformation is. So normally in the brain circulation, the artery and vein is usually connected by capillary network, which is a high resistance flow. In arteriovenous malformation, the capillary network is replaced by the AVM, so which is a low resistance circuit. So there is a significant amount of blood which is passing through the AVM from the artery to the vein. So the surrounding tissue around the AVM, which is called as the perinidal tissue, will be suffering with a phenomenon called as vascular steal. So the blood from that part of the area is stolen and it was bypassing through the AVM to the venous circulation. So it has been proven by studies long ago, the studies which are done on PET and SPECT scans. The the due to the intracerebral steal, the surrounding perinidal tissue around the arteriovenous malformation will be having a chronic ischemia or hypoxia situation, due to which, as an adaptive mechanism, they try to increase the perfusion pressure by doing vasodilatation. So if you see the formula of cerebral perfusion pressure, it is actually MAP by cerebral vascular resistance. So what the surrounding tissue does to survive is it will decrease the CVR so that the perfusion pressure is maintained. So by decreasing the CVR, there will be some amount of vasodilatation in the surrounding tissue. So with this basic physiological background, we will just go to the next slide. So let us first understand what actually we are discussing and what is the incidence of this problem. This is not a very common problem, and studies are showing that the incidence ranges between 1 to 2%. So what is the actual mechanism behind this kind of rare complication? There are two mechanisms which are described in the history of literature. One is called as a normal perfusion pressure breakthrough. The second one is called as occlusive hyperemia theory. Let us see the first one, which is called as the normal perfusion pressure breakthrough. This concept was actually explained by Spletzer and team in 1978. The concept that they explained can be seen in this particular slide, and you can see this is actually the arteriovenous malformation. So there is a significant amount of blood going through this, and the surrounding vasculature will be vasodilated according to NPVB theory, and there will be some amount of blood which is going through that. So when you occlude the blood flow to the AVM by surgery or embolization, there will be significant shift of blood going through these vasodilated vessels, and there is a possibility of hyperemia and edema followed by hemorrhage. So this can happen during the intraoperative period. which manifests as an intraoperative brain bulge, or it can also happen in the postoperative period, which will manifest as the cerebral edema and hemorrhage in CT scan, and patient might go into drowsiness and comatose situation. In this particular graph, you can see on the x-axis there is blood pressure, and on the y-axis we have the cerebral blood flow. So there, what happens in the perinatal ischemic brain is the system becomes pressure passive, and there will be a loss of auto regulation in that part of the brain. So what happens is the if the blood pressure shifts from if the blood pressure is in this range of A, there will be no breakthrough of the blood vessels. But if the blood pressure shifted to C, there will be a breakthrough in the ischemic part of the brain, that is the perinatal tissue. So this is the core of normal perfusion pressure breakthrough theory, which suggests that even with a normal blood pressure, there can be a breakthrough in the perinatal area, leading to the complication of hyperemia. The next concept, the normal perfusion pressure breakthrough theory was unchallenged from 1978 till 1993, when Al Rodhan et al. And team proposed a different concept called as occlusive hyperemia theory. And according to this theory, the feeding artery which feeds the AV malformation will have a stagnation of flow after the AVM resection or embolization. So this stagnation of blood flow will lead to ischemia in the perinatal tissue, which is already ischemic. So there is a possibility of ischemia increasing, which will lead to edema, and this along with a venous congestion might lead to hyperemia and breakthrough. So this was the concept explained by Al Rodhan et al. The similar concept of occlusive hyperemia theory has also been seen in some of the cases of AVM radiosurgery, and this is a case report of case series of 2 cases. And the another concept which actually might lead to the complication is residual AVM. So even after the surgery, there might be a residual AVM component which is left, so which actually can bleed in the postoperative period, which will actually present in a similar way like NPPB. So this residual AVM can be identified by indocyanine green during the surgery, which is a quick and safe method, and it can also be detected in the postoperative angiography. So these are the different theories, and so let us see what actually the NPPB theory stands after 35 years. So this particular study, this particular paper was written by the same Spletzer et al. Who has discovered the NPPB theory. The purpose of this work is to review the current status of NPPB theory after 35 years of the original description. So in this particular paper, they explained explained the contraindicating studies to the NPPB. This is one among them. This study is done by Young et al. So in this particular study, they have proven that the autoregulation is actually not gone in the surrounding perinatal tissue, but it is actually present. So how they actually did the study is by measuring the cerebral blood flow in the perinatal tissue. So after the AVM resection, they observed that there is an increase in the cerebral blood flow due to shift in the blood flow from the AVM to the perinatal tissue. After that, to check for the hemodynamic component, they have given phenylephrine and increased the blood pressure. But surprisingly, what they found is there was no increase in the cerebral blood flow after increasing the blood pressure with phenylephrine, and they concluded saying that the shift in the increase in the cerebral blood flow was due to shift in the blood after due to the AVM resection or embolization, and they suggested that there is some amount of autoregulation intact in the surrounding vessels, which is actually preventing the increase in cerebral blood flow, which is supposed to happen by increasing the blood pressure by phenylephrine. Another theory is capillary theory, which says that the surrounding ischemic tissue around the AVM will develop neovascularization. During the process of neovascularization, the vessels will not have a proper foot process of the astrocyte, and they are very prone for rupture. This might be one of the mechanisms for the breakthrough which is happening at the normal blood pressure. And another study done by the same team tried to assess the cerebrovascular reactivity of carbon dioxide using cerebral blood flow studies, and they have proven that the CO2 reactivity was intact in the perinatal tissue, suggesting that the autoregulation is actually intact to some extent. This is another case report which is very interesting. This is a case of AV malformation with aneurysm, and here what happened is the aneurysm ruptured and there was a subarachnoid hemorrhage in the perinatal tissue. So, and what they found out in the DSA is that there is a significant vasospasm in the perinatal tissue. So, what the authors concluded is that there is some amount of autoregulation around the perinatal tissue, because if it was not there, there cannot be vasospasm secondary to SAH in those vessels if they are totally vasoparalyzed. So finally, in 1994, this same team, Young et al., has come up with a concept called as adaptive autoregulation in the perinatal tissue. So what they suggest is that the autoregulation is not totally gone. So before the AVM resection, since there is an hypoperfusion in the tissue, what the vessels does is they go into vasodilatory phase, and when the AVM is resected, when the blood flow is replenished, so they try to actually constrict and they adapt to a new situation. This is called as the adaptive autoregulation. Even the occlusive hyperemia theory has been challenged by this particular study. Here what they did is they used a micro spectrophotometer to measure the oxygen level in the perinatal tissue, and what they found is the perinatal tissue is actually not having any kind of ischemia, but rather there was a hypoperfusion, an increase in the oxygenation in the perinatal tissue after the AVM resection. So this study actually refutes the concept of occlusive hyperemia theory. And a similar study also was done using NIRS, and they also found that the surrounding perinatal tissue was actually having an increased oxygenation, so refuting the concept of occlusive hyperemia theory. So what are the preventive strategies for intraoperative NPBB occurrence? I have taken this from this particular study, and so before preventing, you need to diagnose the situation. There are different ways of diagnosis. For theoretical basis, SPECT and CBF studies should be done immediately, but they are not very practical. So practically, a CT scan with leaking of contrast medium suggests that there is some amount of hypoperfusion happening in the surrounding brain, and NIRS, which is the near infrared spectroscopy, compared to the baseline value, if there is 8 to 12% change, then we can anticipate that the patient is actually developing a normal perfusion pressure breakthrough. And another study done by Sang et al. Proved that the CT perfusion study and the mean transit time difference of more than 3 seconds before and after the AVM resection strongly suggests that the patient might develop hyperemia in the postoperative period. These are different ways of diagnosing the situation. And in some centers, actually, they are preoperatively they're doing nidus embolization also. So they actually go to the nidus and they try to embolize it. So currently, staged embolization is a better way to prevent this complication, and also maintaining a constant normal blood pressure during the intraoperative and postoperative period is another acceptable preventive strategy. Coming to this is the last study I'm going to show. So, this study showed that it is again done by same Young et al. It is published in 1996, and this study showed that the patients where the NPPB had occurred in a retrospective analysis of 150 patients of AVM surgeries, they had a significantly higher cerebral blood flow compared to non-NPPB patients. But the important thing why I'm showing the study is the change of cerebral blood flow that they noticed is seen globally, not only in the perinatal tissue. This is a very important finding they found out. And how they did the study is the feeding artery pressure they were measuring during the breakthrough period, and what they found is the feeding artery pressure is almost the same, but there was a global increase in the cerebral blood flow. So what they concluded from this particular study is, according to this study, there is no point in staging the surgery, because even though we stage it, it is not the perinatal area we are actually seeing the cerebral blood flow changes. It is a global change. So that is a very important conclusion from this particular study. And another important inference is that there is no change in the feeding MIP pressure. So conclusion is that both the hypotheses are not mutually exclusive. They exist in the same spectrum of the hemodynamic alterations following AVM surgeries. So we need to understand each AVM separately, and there should be an individualized approach to each particular AVM. And staging the procedures are a way proven to be effective in different studies, even though some are refuting it, but staging the procedure would be one better alternative. And maintaining normotension, not hypotension, normotension in the intraoperative and postoperative period is a practically acceptable practice. So topics I covered are different types of NPPB and what is the physiological basis, evidence for and against I discussed, and what are the strategies for prevention. Thank you very much for patient listening.